Sorry, a cat just ran into my room, and now it's being quickly ferreted out. But yes, we can start the questions.
Wow, it enters a cat and it leaves a ferret.
Yeah.
How do you ferret out a cat? Are you sure you're not making a category error?
It's magic.
Hello and welcome to Because Language, a show about linguistics, the science of language. My name's Daniel Midgley, and with me now, he's never been into word games, but now he's fallen in a big way for Semantle. It's terribly sad. It's Ben Ainsley.
I'm not proud of my addiction, but I will not run from it.
You love it.
I have been enjoying it, and I'll say this, Semantle so far is the funnest co-op permutation of all of these games. Like, I don't know how to...
The all games.
Yeah.
What is it? Can you tell me?
Semantle, we've covered it on the show. Headers is actually the one who brought it to our attention. But then some students of mine, some year nines, were the ones who really cemented my love for it. You have unlimited guesses of any kind of word that you want, but instead of being close letter-wise, a la Wordle, it's just semantic similarity. So you'll get a little out of 100 score. Basically, it's kind of a really fancy version of 20 questions, right, Daniel? You basically go, okay, car. No, sorry, that's like a 2
like a
out
5.
of 100.
No, never mind.
Injury.
Injury. Oh, that's a 12. Oh, I'm getting close.
Yesterday's final word was pot, and my partner and I were working at it probably for about half an hour, and we were walking down a pathway where we'd got gemstone, jewels, jewelry, finery, casino, poker, gamble, because in poker you have a pot, right, in the middle of the table. But of course, that was just such a red herring for us. So eventually we got to pipe, tobacco, that sort of stuff, alcohol, and then eventually I was like, marijuana! And it was one word away. I was like, ha ha! My misspent youth finally comes to
fruition.
Oh, I have to try that. That sounds fabulous.
It's really good.
And then the really, really fun thing I found was that after you get it, then you can backtrace other semantic pathways, right? So once we'd got pot, we could then go, okay, pan. Okay, that was another really close one. Cutlery. Oh, okay, we could have come at it that way.
That was the way that I came at it, because the first word that I got in the top 500 was fish. I'm like, fish, and then to soup, and then to pot.
Yeah, there you go.
So all the kitchen words. By the way, we have a very special guest co-host, the original language communicator, the original Lingcommer. You know her as Grammar Girl. It's Mignon Fogarty.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I'm a podcaster, so I just couldn't keep my mouth shut even during the intro.
We haven't introduced you yet. Be quiet.
It's no. I completely back the sort of and I'm just going to take a guess here, the deep nerd impulse of someone just mentioned a game. I need to know more about this new game.
Absolutely. I have to know.
I get that. I definitely get that.
The nerd urge to know the game.
Someone mentioned a game. Must find out more.
Thank you for being here with us. You've got a lot of projects. You've got your Grammar Girl column and podcast. You've also got Quick and Dirty Tips, which is just all over the place with great information. What else have you got going on these days?
Right. Well, I have games. So actually, speaking of games, I have a card game called Peeve Wars that I love.
Okay.
Yeah, I always imagine pet peeves were these little monsters, like fuzzy monsters that you could play with,
Oh, they are.
I'd wanted to make a game about them for years, and then when I lived in Nevada, I met a guy named Joe Kisenweather who worked at a game company. He made slot machines, but he's a mathematician who was really into games, and that was right when crowdfunding came about too, as a thing you could do, and so suddenly it all came together, and we could make this card game that I had in my mind for years. So that's one of my love projects is Peeve Wars.
Wow, okay. That sounds fun.
The goal, you'll love this. The goal is to annoy your opponent to death.
I'm on board.
Irregardless.
Yeah.
See, I'm impervious to this kind of thing. I really am. There's no way to get to me.
Yeah, linguists would be terrible. Well, a certain kind of linguist, descriptivists, would be terrible to play with because they'd just be like, ooh, fascinating.
Really? Where are you from?
And Joe just begged me to put no educational value on the box, but I resisted.
Okay. Cool. And you've got a new show coming up under your Quick and Dirty Tips and Primatur.
Yeah, so the Quick and Dirty Tips Network, which is my network, we have a new show called Curious State, and the host is Doug Frazier. It's about all these fascinating questions you never wondered, but now you want to know, like why babies don't have kneecaps, and if dinosaurs lived today, could they, like, what would they eat? It's all these just fascinating questions.
Us. The answer is us.
He does.
It's obviously us.
If Jurassic Park has taught us anything.
It's more, the Quick and Dirty Tips Network to date has been, a single host, a scripted show, just get in, get out, give you a good answer on one question every week. And this is more of the NPR style conversational, exploratory kind of show. So it's a little branch out for our network. So we're very excited. That's called Curious State.
We will drop a link on our website, becauselanguage.com. Thanks for being with us. We're going to answer some questions today. Oh, but wait, are we spruiking stuff? Because this could be the bit where I say, hello, patrons, you're here for a bonus patron edition. Thanks very much for listening. If you are listening to this slightly later and you're not a patron, you can hear episodes like this bonus episode the minute they come out. Just go to patreon.com/becauselangpod. That's us.
And you also get to join our Discord where all of these questions get asked and all of our wonderful, wonderful, tremendously smart, nerdy listeners hang out and talk about this stuff.
Ben, you could be posting your word results too. It's fun.
I really want to... I don't know if I've still got the capacity to screenshot it, but the day before yesterday's, the day before pot, was assemble. I didn't get it, but yes. Within like 15 or maybe 20 guesses, got within 10 words.
And so tantalizing.
It was, I Ahabbed on this bad boy so bad. Like there was some Edgar Allan Poe, Lenore type shit going down. I was fixated in a big way. I was like, synthesize, build,
organize,
create, organize.
Marshall.
It was terrible. It was really bad.
That was the one that I got in 12.
You can die in a fire. All right? Okay, I'll call you Ishmael for the rest of the show. Fine.
Ishmael it is. Thanks to all our patrons. Mignon, I want to talk about Grammar Day for a sec.
Sure.
Because when it was Grammar Day on March 4th, someone tweeted and I retweeted, National Grammar Day is cop shit. Because we know that people use grammar as a way of making language prejudice acceptable under the guise of education. You know this, I know this. But then I realized this wasn't really fair because grammar is awesome and fun, and knowing the names for the pieces of language and how they fit together, it thrills my soul. And then I found out that you're the rep for Grammar Day, and I've followed your work long enough to know that you get it, all right? You're aware of variation. Your advice is usage-based. So I wanted to get your take. What's your take on Grammar Day? How do you encourage enthusiasm for grammar but discourage language policing? How do you thread that needle?
Yeah, most of all, it's about trying to make people think about how fun language can be. Like that's what I'm all about. And I've been in charge of National Grammar Day for about 10 years. Martha Brockenbrough founded it. I think she was a junior high school English teacher when she founded it, and it was sort of a way to help make it fun to teach her students about grammar. And then she went on to do just amazing things with children's fiction. She writes children's fiction and nonfiction, fabulous books. And she really found that, grammar wasn't so much her thing anymore. And so she handed it over to me. And, over the years, it's been, I'm always trying to find interesting ways. We made a National Grammar Day theme song a few years ago. There's a music video. We have quizzes, and John McIntyre always writes a grammar noir short story, which, is just so much fun.
He's from the Baltimore Sun?
He did copy editing at the Baltimore Sun, and this year he imagined that Paula Froke, one of the editors from the AP Style book, had been kidnapped by grammar peevers and had to rescue her. It does happen that, people know that it's National Grammar Day and they post, things that are harping on language and things that annoy them. And we just try to, ignore those.
Yeah.
And I retweet a lot of things from people who talk more about, the variety of language and how it's fun and how we aren't out there grammar copying everyone's language and trying to nitpick. I mean, I think it's important to learn how to write in standard English. Like that, I do think that is something that's worth learning. And then you have to find a way to do it that isn't demeaning to other forms of English, because there are many other forms of English and they're all valid. So it is a needle that I have to thread. And I just, I also think nobody learns. This has been my founding principle. People do not learn when you're telling them they're bad or they're stupid, right? Like, so going around criticizing people about their language isn't going to help them get any better. Even if you think that there's a better and a worse, that's not going to help. So I just encourage people to be positive and supportive. And I am always trying to talk about, dialects and all valid forms of English.
I don't want to criticize people for their language use. I want to criticize people for their rotten attitudes about language. And that'll help them change.
I think it's so weak, too, if you're arguing with someone and suddenly you're criticizing their grammar. Well, you're not engaging with their argument. So, it's kind of a weak attack anyway.
Yeah.
My most recent account or recounting of just like the worst permutation of, I'm going to call it grammar policing, because it's not strictly grammar, it's like spelling, but Noongar woman, that's the local sort of indigenous family group where Daniel and I live, was at a university arguing with the person in charge of like publishing a particular text, that this person was basically saying, we have to spell this Noongar word in this way. And she was just going, it was never a written language. Just, you can do many different... And he's like, no, the book says you got to do it this way. And she was like, who wrote the book? Let's just... And apparently, yeah, after half an hour of trying to argue with this person, they just didn't budge. They were just like, nah, it's the rule. And she was just like, I'm out. And that is just that, for me, that is, things like that is what we need to constantly sort of hold the line against, where we just kind of keep saying to those people, think, just stop and think for a second about what's going on here.
Like, you want to do what's right, but what's right is situational, and this is a situation.
Right. You might like this. When I first started, the show's entire name is Grammar Girl's Quick and Dirty Tips for Better Writing. And the publisher at Macmillan, that is my partner in Quick and Dirty Tips Network, always joked that I was educating one errant porn seeker at a time. And more recently, I know that, people come to Grammar Girl because it sounds prescriptive. And so, like, lately, like last few years, I've joked, well, I'm educating one errant prescriptivist seeker at a time.
So true. If it's funny and true, it has meaning.
Oh boy, Grammar Girl, somebody who's on my wavelength. What? boy, were they disappointed. All right, well, we got a lot of questions from our listeners, from our readers. We should get to them.
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, this one comes from Tim on our Discord server.
Tim.
Tim asks, what is the past tense of the verb text? At least in Minnesota, USA, it can be texted or text with a D, or just text. I've heard it in the Twin Cities metro area and in the New Ulm, very not metro area. I text my sister yesterday. What do you think?
I say text as a past tense.
She texted
like
me?
same word for present and past tense. But okay. I have also said texted before. I feel like that usage for me personally has waned. And yeah, I text them.
Okay. So it seems like it's...
I don't talk about it too much.
No?
I've definitely seen text, just plain old text is the past tense. I think I say texted, but like kind of slurred at the end, like texted. It's hard to say.
Text.
I imagine this is a usage that is far more salient to people, say, under 30. And like the lower you go, the more salient it becomes. Like, and so I'm well and truly on the other side of that barrier now. So I think, like Mignon, I'm like, yeah. I mean, I guess I say this, but I'm not having a lot of conversations about the people that I communicated with via text.
So what do you think's going on? Why are people doing this?
I think it's the D in fridge.
The D in fridge? I sort of remember that question.
So, like, why is there a D in fridge? Because it's nicer. Like, it's cleaner. It works better in our brains. Because otherwise we'd be going like freeg. And this is just kind of a version of that where, like, exactly like Mignon just said, texted. It's just clunky. It's not very nice. It has a bad mouth feel. And so we just drop it and it works.
Whereas in people's minds, if there's a t sound, it just works. Like, there are three ways that the regular past tense can appear. You can have a t like worked, you can have d like played, and you can have ed like sorted. And in people's minds, if there's a t sound at the end, then the brain says, that's past tense enough for me, so she texted me.
I'd also go further than that. I don't know about other accent varieties of English. The way I pronounce the T, the second T in text is the same way I pronounce the T in city.
Oh.
Right?
Like with not a T, but a R.
Yeah. Like for a lot of people, not all sort of English varieties, but certainly for Australian English, when you say city, it's a D sound. And I texted them or I texted them.
Text them. Okay, interesting.
There are so many ways to pronounce T.
There's so many ways to pronounce T. There's...
T,
let's count them.
You vagabond, you scarlet woman of the letter world.
No, we did a show on Neil Whitman wrote a show for me about pronouncing T, and I think there are 10 or 12 different ways to pronounce T.
What are they? How many can you do?
Oh, God, no, I don't know. That's why I hire people to write these things.
I'll do it. There's aspirated T, like as in text. There's regular T, as in step. There's unaspirated T, like as in pot. Yep. Those three sound different. There's glottal stop T, as in kitten. There's... what else? There's a tap, as in city. That's 5.
I feel like that one's a cheat, though. That's just T stealing D's job, right? Like, that's not a unique pronunciation of T. That's just T being like, I'm taking this.
No, it's not really D, because D would be, like, important. But this one is slightly different. It's not a duh where you're sitting on it. It's a tap. So
right,
Sid D would be Sid D, but city is very quick.
Okay, fair enough. So it was kind of like not MC Hammer. Who was the old white rapper?
Vanilla Ice.
Vanilla. It's kind of like Vanilla Ice borrowing. Like Queen and Bowie.
That's right.
It's very subtly different,
We both got that right away.
I'm going to have to listen out to that podcast and find out what the other 4 are, because I haven't got them.
There you go. But yeah, I have to imagine the listening experience for our listeners is really frustrating, where you're just kind of like, T, I know what T's about. There's how many? you just sit there going, why? Why would you make me aware of this?
Thanks, Tim, for that great question. Okay, let's go on to the next one. This is Meredith Musing on Twitter has tagged us in on this one. It's about the Mandela effect. Please.
Okay. I'm sure most of you know this, even if you don't know the name for it, but it's been kind of doing the rounds now in the sort of various blogospheres and podospheres and vlogospheres and all that kind of thing. It's when a thing from your past isn't what your very, very, very firm memory of it is, right? And it gets its name because, bizarrely to me, because this is not actually a Mandela effect for me, is heaps and heaps of people apparently believed that Nelson Mandela died in prison like decades ago, despite the fact that he was like the president of South Africa for a really long time after that point. But there are other Mandela effect things that have worked on me very, very firmly. So the one that I find firmest was the Berenstain Bears. That one, to this day, I still will go to my grave believing there is a grand unified conspiracy working against me.
They replaced all the books that you read as a child to be Berenstain, A-I-N, instead of what you know it is, E-I-N.
Yeah, literally in every possible place and space, they have gone and replaced thousands and thousands and thousands of texts to fuck with me specifically.
You know this one, Mignon, right?
Yes, I will go to my grave thinking that I was taught to spell dilemma, D-I-L-E-M-N-A. I'm one of the dilemma people with the Mandela effect, and I went into Google Books searching for like language arts children's books to see if I had been taught. And I've talked to people I went to school with in grade school, and they think so too. They think we were taught to spell it Dilemna. And there are thousands of people who think this, but there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever.
Wow, that's Look, I think the reason the Mandela effect has such sort of indelible poignancy and it just doesn't seem to go away is because when you find one that works on you, like I was just saying, you are utterly convinced there has to be another explanation, right? Like you are like, no.
It's just that nobody's found it yet.
My memory could never be constructed.
There is a real sense that someone has inceptioned you, right? Like someone has gone into my dreams and laid all of these memories. They're like, how else could this be a thing? So I'm guessing, Daniel, that there's another new Mandela effect coming down the pipe.
There is. It's the cartoon The Flintstones.
Okay.
What?
People are convinced that it was just Flynn, S-T-O, Flintstones.
Oh, no T.
But in fact, if you look at the logo, there's a T in there, and there always has been. The Flintstones. Yeah. People are saying, when did the T come in? That T wasn't there. I never grew up with a T. So
for me, this is another one like the actual namesake Mandela effect, where I'm like, yeah, Flintstones, right? Because
of course it's Flintstones.
Flint is like that thing that you make sparks from. Like if you're a caveman and you're making fires, you'd probably use Flintstones.
Is that darn T again? Right?
There it is, you mischievous letter.
Darn letter. I guess it's hard to say. When you said the Flintstones, it sounded odd, right? We say the Flintstones.
Yes. Flintstones.
So, yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't think I've ever pronounced the T in Flintstones. The first T in Flintstones. But I've always known it was there. Yeah.
So what's going on with this process? Any good guesses?
I reckon some of it would have to do with the fact that for a lot of people, like, Flintstones is really old, first of all. Right? We're talking like 50 years old now. Half a century ago is when the Flintstones were at peak popularity. And yeah, absolutely, I remember watching them when I was little on like reruns and stuff, but not all the time. And so I think for a lot of people, their only real access to the Flintstones was probably when they were quite little themselves. And so what do we most remember about the Flintstones?
Yabba Dabba Doo?
Well, the song.
Exactly. Well, the song. Flintstones, meet the Flintstones, they're the prehistoric family, blah, blah, right? Like, most of us can just rattle off a bit of that. And the one thing we remember is Flintstones, meet the Flintstones, right? So if your primary memory of this text is the sound of the name, yeah, of course you wouldn't think that first T is there because you don't say it.
Maybe they weren't even old enough to read.
Very good point. Yeah, absolutely.
But why do we as English speakers drop that T customarily when saying that word?
It's hard to say.
Linguists.
Yeah, you're the linguist.
Okay.
Why?
So here's what's going on. There's a process called epenthesis, which means sticking a sound in where there isn't one. Okay. For example, in a word like prince, as in the king and the prince, we stick a T in there. It's such a Reader's Digest joke, by the way. You're waiting for your photos to get developed, and you say, someday my prince will come. Right? Okay. But the reason we stick in a T into prince is that you're going from an N to an S. You're going from nasal. The N comes out your nose. The S comes out your mouth. And so you have to close. You're doing a couple of things. You're closing off the nasal cavity to go oral. And then you're going from N with your tongue on your alveolar ridge, make an N, and then you're going to S. You're just opening that up a little bit. And if you go from nasal to oral just a hair before you let go of that N and drop it to the S, drop your tongue down to the S, it's going to have a T sound. It's just, I don't want to say sloppy articulation because that sounds judgy, but, it's imprecise articulation, and you get a T in there. So that's sticking in a T, but we're talking about dropping a T. And so I think what's happening is if you can insert a T that isn't there, you can drop a T that is. People are hearing flints and maybe thinking, I hear T's that aren't there all the time, and I mentally delete them from the word, like Prince. Must be one of those.
Do we think, because in that fun little tongue exercise you just got us to do,
Yes.
you can feel your tongue moving past the point where you would make a T, right?
Yeah.
So as you go from the N to the S, that the tip of the tongue slides past where it would be to make that T sound. So do you think there's almost like a little thing in our brains where we go, I did it. I made a T.
Did the thing.
Like my tongue is doing the thing that the tongue does when I make a T. So like it's there. It's depowered maybe, but it's there. I did a T. It's a thing. Flintstones, first T.
It's the de-aspirated T, but it's still a T. Yeah. But it's funny how people are just mentally not only deleting the T sound, but also just deleting the T letter in the word. I just think that's fascinating.
Is this the same reason I can't say the word contexts? The plural
Oh,
of
yeah,
context.
contexts.
Yeah, it's very chunky, and that level of precision is just not required if you're in certain contexts. You can just say context. CONTEX. And this is the thing with evolution and with speech. It just has to be good enough not to break down completely.
Yeah.
Right? All you have to do is just be good enough not to fail. And contexts and desks, masks. People are telling me that people are saying, how you can ask me a question. A linguist told me that she's hearing people say they're putting on a max.
Huh.
Oh, yeah. In a similar way to how Ave has sort of flipped those things for the word ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I found out something new, by the way. The Coverdale Bible, 1530s. There's the passage, ask and you shall receive.
Mm-hmm.
That's printed in the Coverdale Bible, AXE, axe.
Nice.
Ask and you shall receive. Yeah.
Very
I had not
cool.
realized that, but there it is.
Man, spelling used to be so much cooler, didn't it?
Yeah.
It was just like seat of your pants stuff. Like,
Come as you are.
I'm doing it this way.
Love that.
All right. So thanks to at Meredith Musing for sending us that one. I really enjoy new Mandela effects.
I just on contexts, Mignon.
Yeah.
I use it. It's one of my little, and I'm probably going to make an enemy here, but that's kind of what I do on the show. I use it as my like wanker shibboleth. I've got a couple of them. So there's that, and there's also appreciate.
Appreciate. I know
That's
your
my-
wanker shibboleths.
That's my other wanker shibboleth. So if someone is making a real point when they're speaking to say both I appreciate or the various contexts, I'm like, okay then. Right.
Yeah, I edit it out whenever it shows up in one of my scripts. If I don't want to say that word. That is way
no
too hard.
shibboleths for me.
No, we're going to say situation instead.
I like that.
You just got to realize that it's just people doing what they want to do in a situation to be as clear as they think they need to be or as formal as they think they need to be.
Flexing. That's what it sounds like to me. A big bunch of flex offenders.
I guess it's punching up, so I'm going to allow it.
Yeah. We can always make fun of rich people. Sorry.
It's fine. Let's go to one from Hillary via email, hello@becauselanguage.com. I am a middle school English teacher in San Francisco
Respect.
with a bachelor's in linguistics. In the past 2 or so years, I've noticed students using the word mines instead of the word mine. Example sentences, can you grade mines, or I finished mines? I initially observed this among students who are English learners, which didn't fill me with concern because second language acquisition is different. However, I have started to hear mines now from students who are monolingual English speakers, possibly because they're hearing it from peers, and it's starting to fill me with confusion. I would say I've heard this, seen it in writing from somewhere between 40 and 50 students at my school. Wow. Have you heard this?
I have not.
Not me.
No?
Not amongst the young people that I am in front of.
I got curious about this, so I headed to Twitter just to see if there was any, and Google Books to see if anything was going on, both in informal writing and in formal writing. And there are so many examples of somebody ate mines, or I already finished mines.
Recent examples, or are we going back a ways here?
Very recent examples on Twitter, often from African American folks.
Wow.
Okay.
It appears in a novel On the Come Up by Hannah Wire, 2014. I ain't finished mines.
I was going to have two guesses, right?
Okay.
The generous guess is that this was a relatively school-specific thing, because little micro memes happen like that. I see that from time to time in the schools I've worked in, where like a little funny little thing happens and it sort of mimetically spreads just amongst the immediate group of people. So it could have been that. I think the less generous and far more likely example is this is yet another example of black stuff being cool, so I'm going to steal the cool stuff because I'm not black and thus not cool, so I want to aspire. It's like, gosh, black people must be really sick of just having everything just pilfered and appropriated linguistically. I've got kids. Now, I've changed jobs recently, so I'm working at a school that has some astounding wealth amongst the sort of like the families who attend the school. And, you know, I've got white kids saying like, oh, that's pretty drip, meaning like cool gear or good kit or whatever. And I'm just like, just no. Just on every level, no. The really rich white kid from Perth, Western Australia, it's so tragic.
So cringe.
It's pretty chuggy. Anyway, I reckon, given what you've just said about the fact that it's actually showing up a lot recently, I think this is just mainstream society once again reaching into Aave and being like, this seems fun.
Yeah. It's been said, I wish that people loved black people as much as they love black culture.
I like that.
What do you think, Mignon?
Well, I think you're probably right. What I was going to say before you convinced me otherwise is just that possessive pronouns are kind of hard. I've never seen mines, but all the time I see I's, like Daniel and I's conversation, like I apostrophe S.
Oh, yeah, that's fun. I definitely do that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and people have asked me about it. I searched Twitter. It's rampant. You find lots and lots of examples.
Rampant.
It's rampant on Twitter. So, and I think, people always ask why, they often ask me why people can't get the right spelling of your, why is there, or it's, why do people put an apostrophe in the it's when it's a pronoun? And it's just, I think the possessive pronouns are confusing because they end with S, but then they're possessive, and we learn that apostrophes are about possessives. And then these words they're possessive and they end with S, but they don't have an apostrophe, and that just seems to blow people's minds, or at least confuse them. So
it's yet another example of like whoever just sat down and invented English all at once, like put the beer down. You use it for a plural, you use it for possession. Like, come on, those things both happen a lot. Could we not pick one of them to be different, please?
And that one has changed, actually, because if you go back to 1700s, like Thomas Jefferson's Tree of Liberty letter, he's got it is its natural state. And that today would be ITS, no apostrophe, but he has an apostrophe because John's house, Mary's house, its house. Mm-hmm. So that one has evolved. But yeah,
also,
that is
like
confusing.
we said, that's the good old days where you could just do what you wanted. One S, two S's, five S's, it's a thing.
Eamon Shea says people have always been confused about apostrophes.
Yeah, just drop them. What do you think about dropping apostrophes, Mignon? I have this thing.
That I saw a lot when I was teaching. I was a college professor for a few years, and so many kids would write can't, C-A-N-T, with no apostrophe. I saw it a lot, and it really surprised me.
It.
But then I'm like,
we don't need them.
You don't
really
need
don't.
it. I mean,
like
the NT is one where I think that's the first one to go. Like I mean, some things are already going, like place names. But if we have couldn't and wouldn't and can't and don't, then yeah, we could just drop that with no ill effects.
I know, you could.
No ill effects. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to think about, okay, language in 200, 500 years. If it's the trend, if the drive is towards simplifying language, then that's a no-brainer that's going to happen at some point.
Yeah. Hillary also mentioned this, and I think it's probably what I wanted to say, but she said it first. As a linguist, I can understand the appeal of morphological leveling. Morphological leveling?
Once again, I turn to the linguist. Linguist?
Steamrolling everything flat to be the same.
Right.
Morphological leveling, to have possessive pronouns in the noun position all systematically and in S. We have possessives like his, ends in S, hers, yours, theirs, and ours. So why not mine's? Like mine's is the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that we're seeing mine's. I'm keeping an eye on that one. I expect that it won't be very popular among the prescriptivists.
No.
But it's cool that I haven't seen anybody complaining about it. In fact, you know what, Hillary? I'm thrilled that the first time I hear about it is somebody commenting on how interesting it is instead of how benighted and dopey it is. So thank you for that. Thank you for bringing this to our attention.
I think if you're in Hillary's position and you're teaching English in middle school, if you genuinely, like, being a prescriptivist in that job would suck so hard. Like, you would just be under assault constantly. So I think, Hillary, you've definitely, for your own mental health and well-being, you've taken the right direction in being like, oh, isn't this fascinating? Rather than, the kids these days.
Oh, you would just feel under siege all the time, like society was collapsing. Once again, religion causes unnecessary suffering.
And anyone who's ever taught anything alongside other people knows that there's definitely teachers out there who just hate their job. Like, it's a thing. And I'm not just talking at high school, right? Like, there's people at university where you're just like, why are you doing this? You clearly hate it. But yeah, Hillary is obviously one of the good ones. Yay, Hillary.
Yay. Mignon, you're also one of the good ones. And you know what? I've also found that copy editors, you'd think that copy editors would be like, no, I'm taking my red pencil and scratching through everything you write. I have found that copy editors are just super solid on all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Absolutely. Copy editors, one, they're so much fun. And two, they understand the difference between, okay, I'm doing my job, I'm editing an annual report for IBM or whatever, and it has to have a certain register, a certain style of language. It has to be formal standard English. But outside of that, like, we work in words. We like to play with words. We think it's fascinating when people are saying minds. You know, it's like the fun part of our job. Or, you know, it's I don't know. It's like, we love language, and there's a time when you need to enforce standard English rules, and there's a time when it's perfectly fine to play with it, and it's always fascinating.
I've always imagined with copy editors that the parallel is like being a very, very good dancer in a traditional school of some kind, like being amazing at ballet or flamenco or some other tradition that has really strong rules. But you take that person out and they are getting down. You know what I mean? Like, it's not always going to look like that, and they probably have a love for the art that extends well beyond the very formal boundaries of whatever it is that they have to do in one realm of their life.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. My favorite meeting of the year is the American Copy Editor Society annual meeting. Just so much fun.
I want to go. Because I think it'd be a scream.
Whenever I'm part of this show and we have people on who are like, oh, you've got to get to the annual meetup of the grammarians, and literally if you said that phrase in any pub anywhere in the world, the people would just be like, okay, sure. And after that, I'll go, and I always rag on accountants. I'm sorry, accountants. I'll go to the accounting seminar or whatever. But yeah, I think it would actually be really fun.
I think it would be a hoot. Do you know if it's online only this year, or are they meeting up again?
It actually just happened. It's at the beginning of January, right. So it kind of. Oh no, actually no, you're right. It's
no,
soon.
It's April. Yeah,
it's coming up. I'm not going because of COVID, but I think it's like half and half. I think it's hybrid this year. But they have a spelling bee, and that's where I learned from. I learned from Corey Stamper a few years ago when she was at Merriam-Webster. She gave a talk about the history of English, and I learned that. I think it was Lindley Murray who said you should not use who to refer to children because they aren't logical beings. That children should be called it. You know, I mean, that's the kind of trivia you get at that kind of meeting.
And you know what, the other thing about ACES is that's when they bring out, the MLA will bring out all their changes. It's like, all right, folks, this is the dumb stuff that is now okay.
Yeah, it's the AP style book. They make their announcements every year at that meeting. Yeah.
That.
Yeah.
Right.
And I would go and I would live tweet my heart out from that talk.
I'm going to see you there one year. I swear to Zeus. I'm coming. All right, this question comes from Ayelet, who sent us her voice on SpeakPipe. Easy to do. Just head to our website, becauselanguage.com. It's right there. So here is her question.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Ayelet from Israel. I teach Hebrew as a second language, and I really love your podcast. I think a lot lately about how technical limits of technology shape and change language. It could be little things, like the meaning of number one directly after an exclamation mark. I can tell you I find myself using this also when I write by hand. But it could also be larger things. For instance, my Japanese friend says Japanese people tend to forget how to write kanji characters nowadays because they only get to write them phonetically using a keyboard. Or my South African student says autocorrect made her develop all these spelling mistakes because it takes away the need to actually remember the correct way of spelling words. I guess I should be asking a question, right? So my question is, what do you think about this?
Okay, first you have to tell me what the number one after an exclamation point means.
Oh, I know what that means. I can guess that.
I have no idea.
Go on.
When you're smashing the exclamation mark, right, one is the number underneath it. So if you let go of shift, or if the shift lock drops on your keyboard or something like that, right, like a one, like, am I wrong here?
So
Like,
it's just
if
a mistake?
Yeah, but like it's a mistake that is happening often enough. Like when you get a text, like, oh my God, exclamation mark, 1, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. It's just like being replicated now as, I guess, like almost like a funny para meme or something.
Yeah, they do it when they want to be funny or they mock somebody that they disagree with.
Oh, okay. So it's a mistake that's taken on meaning.
Yeah, that's right. And notice how this is an artifact of keyboard era, not phones era, because phones, you can just type exclamation points all you want. But with the keyboard, yeah, like when you're mocking somebody you disagree with and you want to send up their viewpoint, you say, "Oh my gosh, the communists are coming!" Exclamation XXXXX 1 XXX.
Okay.
So
I'm going to save this for future use.
Well, it's kind of an old joke around 2005 when I started seeing it. And I've actually seen people type the word one, in that string of characters.
Wow, we're really drifting now.
No, but that's important, actually, because one thing I've noticed is everyone says texting language is lazy, right? And it's not, because people go to way more effort to type ONE than the number one. So it's not that people are always trying to save keystrokes. It's not.
I am definitely guilty of typing like BEE space ARE space BEE. Oh, yeah. Like so.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
BRB.
Be right back.
Can I just clarify as well from Ayelet's message? Her Japanese friend, do we think that what she's saying there is because they type in Romanji, as in the Roman characterization of Japanese much more often?
And then it turns into Japanese characters.
Oh, see, I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of the fact that that's how you would type on a Japanese keyboard.
Yeah, it has been for a while, and of course, don't forget pinyin, the Chinese version of that. Yeah, you type sayonara, you type S-A, and then it turns into sa. And you can choose which sa it is, because there's different ones.
Right, and then that becomes the kanji character of sa, but you've typed S-A.
There you go.
Right. Now, but I also understand that in Chinese, you've actually got a bunch of different methodologies for typing, and some of them don't look like Roman characters even remotely. Is that not the case?
That's right. You can do it by typing in pinyin, letters, Latin letters, or you can do it by scanning through radicals. You can start. There's even a drawing sort of thing. You can draw in a square. And
there was a fascinating podcast where they talked about the sort of like the decades long alterations to how you type Chinese, and I'll before the end of the show I'll dig it up and I'll find where it is actually supposed to be, because it's a bloody good listen.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, true or false, spell checking is ruining our spelling. Have you heard this claim?
I've heard it. I also anecdotally probably kind of agree a little bit. Like
Okay.
I would describe myself as being, I've noticed my spelling in the last 5 or 6 years deteriorating, and needing to kind of go like when I'm writing something on a whiteboard, and my kids will be like, And I go,
I have not really noticed that. You know, what I have noticed is spell check making people doubt themselves about things they actually know to be true. So, many, many years ago, Microsoft Word used to correct if you wrote everyone else's, it would mark that as wrong, and it would say it should be everyone's else.
Whoa!
Yeah, this was like, maybe 14, 15 years ago, it would do this. And I got multiple messages from people who were like, I always thought it was everyone else's, but Microsoft Word couldn't possibly be wrong. So can you tell me, like, which it is and why am I wrong? How did I learn it wrong? It really made people doubt themselves. So I think people do rely too heavily on technology sometimes. I mean, people often ask me about Grammarly. Do I recommend Grammarly? And it's like, if you have nothing else, like, it's probably fine. It's going to correct, I don't know, 30% of your errors if you're a student and you don't have someone who can read your paper for you or whatever. It probably helps a little, but I'm like, do not trust it for everything because it makes all sorts of errors.
It's so weird that you would mention somebody's else, because this was actually a real piece of grammar advice from the 1800s. Hang on. Here it is. It's Alfred Ayers in his book, The Verbalist. And he argues that you shouldn't write anybody else's or somebody else's because else is the modifier and you shouldn't add things to it. You should add it to anybody or somebody. So anybody's else.
Yeah.
So this is like a weird governor's general type nonsense, or attorney's general or whatever.
So Ayers says, it is better grammar and more euphonious to consider else as being an adjective and to form the possessive by adding the apostrophe at s to the word that else qualifies. Thus, anybody's else, nobody's else, somebody's else, which is just not what anybody says.
I also just immediately distrust the advice because it describes it as more euphonious. I'm like, nope.
Well, this is
You lost me at more euphonious, which were the first two words in your recommendation, so no.
So maybe Microsoft Word originally used some really, really old grammar book. I don't know.
I don't know if that was ever popular advice, but it has been advice. Just like saying, the man down the street's car, which sounds fine, but the street's car? No, the man's down the street car. It's the same problem.
You're right.
We're in a weird area.
I'm not having that. I'm not tolerating that. No, I will be pushed so far and no further.
So I did some digging around. People have always wondered about this. There has always been this suspicion that the tools we use to write are influencing our writing. People fretted that ballpoint pens were killing cursive or making people bad writers. And the one thing that so many people have suspected is killing language or ruining writing is
text messaging.
Those darn phones. So this shows up in spell checking suspicion. There was a study by Dr. Andrea Lunsford, professor of writing and rhetoric at Stanford, took a look at the most common mistakes in 1988 and then again the most common mistakes in 2008 in student papers. Made a big list of the mistakes. On the 2008 list were the student chose the wrong word. That was number 1. It was number 4 in 1998. And then spelling, including homonyms, which was number 5 on the 2008 list, wasn't even in the top 20 on the 1998 list. And so this professor is saying that she thinks that maybe spell checking is having an effect on our ability to spell. Not the strongest evidence, and this kind of thing existed in Japan as well, even as far back as the 80s. There was a word, wapurobaka, which it means word processor crazy. Wapuro is a word processor and baka is mad. And so if you were wapuro baka, it meant that you were using a word processor too much and you were losing the ability to spell Japanese words. For me, it sounds a bit like a moral panic. Oh, those darn phones and kids these days. Oh, those darn emojis. We're going to go back to hieroglyphics or something like that. Doesn't it just smell like a moral panic?
My question here, as with quite a few moral panics, is just to follow it with like letting someone run on about all of the badness and then just going, and? Okay.
And?
Like, are we potentially choosing to just ship off an entire section of our cognition to technology, which is more or less completely ubiquitous to a pretty substantial part of the world now? And we're talking like even even in sort of developing nations, right? Like phones are an absolutely fundamental tool for people all over the world. And a version of autocorrect or predictive text is available even in really, really rudimentary phones now. Like it's not a particularly complex computing task for the tier of technology that we have available all over the world. So if we just, as a global society, were like, let's just let devices do it in the same way that we did with like long division, we just kind of went, this is just not a thing I'm ever going to need to know. And yes, I know we still technically teach kids grammar and we still technically teach kids long division and stuff, but we all immediately forget it.
We reach for that calculator, yeah?
If you got me to divide, I don't know, like 4,659 by 23, I wouldn't be able to, long division. Not physically, not on a piece of paper, not anymore. I have definitely forgotten that knowledge. Because
that method was devised to overcome our own cognitive limitations. We needed to set it up in a bracket like that because we don't think that way. We had to break it into smaller chunks.
And now it's just kind of like, do we, as a human society, and I don't think this question is settled, by the way. Like, I'm not saying, like, throw out all formal education in your language. You don't need it anymore. But more just kind of going, okay, if that's the way things are going and it really looks like they are, why get the paddle out and try and push the tide back in, you know?
Okay, well, if you want to see what spell checker anxiety looks like in Asian languages, here's the term for you. Character amnesia.
Oh, that's fun.
There are lots of speakers of Japanese and Chinese languages who are willing to say, yeah, you know what? I think my input methods are probably making me forget how to spell words. And you can find videos, there's one from Asian Boss, about people being asked, native Chinese speakers being asked to spell normal words like elbow and toothpaste, and just coming up blank. Just not being able to do it. There's an anecdote on Language Log where a commenter said, I asked 3 professors at the most educated university in China how to spell sneeze. It was sneeze. And they all 3 just went,
That kind of does seem like a shame, doesn't it?
Yeah. Maybe.
How many characters in the simplified Mandarin character set?
I mean, you need about 2,000 or 3,000 to be basically literate, but there are about 50,000 all up.
In the simplified?
In the simplified version.
I'm sorry.
I don't know. I'm gonna say it's a shame.
We have 26 and we fuck it up. Like, Jesus.
Well, you know what it made me wonder, though, is like thinking about the different ways of putting ideas into the world, right? So I type and I write by hand, and sometimes I do voice dictation. And I feel like it uses my brain differently to convey an idea using those different methods from getting the idea from my brain out into the world. And I think there might be some, whether we're talking like good or bad, I think there might be some benefit to like brain health from like using different methods at, over and over, switching it up sometimes. Kind of like it's good for your your brain to learn another language. Maybe it's good for your brain to sometimes write by hand, sometimes type, sometimes do voice dictation.
A bit of neural plasticity.
Yeah, that's the word.
Okay. I have space in my brain for that. That I find that persuasive as a concept. I would also wonder, as natural language processing gets better, I don't think we're ever going to get around the dictation issue that we currently already face, which is, and I'm sure you've both experienced this as well, if you want to give written feedback via dictation that is of a formal register, you got to use your radio voice. Like you've really got to say, good afternoon.
And put spaces between your words.
Yeah. Literally, you say grammar, you do all that kind of stuff. Derek, I'd like to say that I found your feedback helpful, but the truth of the matter, you have to actually really slow it down, formalize it, put all the grammar in, all that kind of stuff. So I also wonder if that's going to be the direction where we still find a bit of that neural plasticity, because we'll have to practice speaking in a and it's stuff that all 3 of us right here on the show, I'm going to assume, either have formal informal training on, having been on podcasts for many years. I studied broadcast journalism when I was in uni, so I sat down and had lessons of like, this is how you speak in simple sentences and all this kind of stuff. I'm wondering if that's a thing that we're going to start teaching people more broadly.
So, do you think this is a thing? Obviously, lots of people are willing to say, oh, yes, the medium is I also find some work by Shuting Huang and a team publishing in Language Sciences. They found that people who write Chinese have forgotten characters, but just because of normal things, like because they were rare, because they acquired them later in life, and because the characters within the word were less familiar. But nothing about input method. It's just that it's hard to keep track of so many characters. And then Guy Almog, who I think I would like to talk to, he's from the Department of Asian Studies at the University of Haifa. He argues that even though a lot of people are willing to say that the device is killing their spelling or killing their memory for writing, he says that the bulk of the empirical support is unreliable or invalid. So what I'm thinking at this point is, yeah, maybe a little bit of a thing, but it also sounds a lot like a moral panic, those darn phones. I think establishing causality is going to be a problem, but I'll be looking for more on that.
Thank you to Ayelet.
Thanks, Ayelet. That was an interesting question, and we'll be looking more into this later.
And thanks so much for using SpeakPipe so we get to hear your awesome voice and accent and just all of it. Like, we would love to hear more people's voices more often. So if you have a question for us, by all means, use SpeakPipe, and then you two can be on the show.
You just have to go to our website, becauselanguage.com, and it's in the upper right-hand corner. You can just start going immediately. Nothing hard to do. It's easy. Okay, Samuel on our Discord sent us a Wiktionary screen grab about Hong Kong, which is, of course, a city, but also means orgasm. And Samuel says, now I'm really interested in how this came to be.
Can we go back a step, please?
No idea.
It seems that Hong Kong, or to go to Hong Kong, in Korean is a euphemism for having an orgasm. For example, there's a commercial. So imagine this, a boy and a girl in a sunny field, and he's lying on his back and he is airplaning her. By which I mean...
Yeah, I get you.
He's got his feet up in the air, her stomach is on his feet, and he's lifting her up, and she's got her arms out like she's an airplane flying.
Like a little bit of acrobalance fun times kind of thing.
Like you do with a kid, right?
Yeah.
But he's having a hard time keeping it up. So she gives him a drink of a certain product, and then, whoa, he has no problem keeping her up in the air. And he says, where do you want to go? And she says, to Hong Kong. Okay.
Creative.
Yeah.
I want to give whoever came up with that particular erectile dysfunction ad idea, there's some Mad Men level shit going on there. That's genius. I really think that's awesome.
So any guesses? Why would going to Hong Kong mean coming?
Is it a romantic place to go for people from Korea?
Okay, that's a good guess.
I was going to kind of guess something similar. I was actually going to wonder, though, if Korea has pilfered it from mainland Chinese usage because, and this is just a complete guess, I'm wondering if for the decades that Hong Kong was still a colony, for lack of a better phrase, of England and thus had, majority Cantonese language and speakers and all that kind of stuff. If as a mainland Chinese person, Hong Kong was the really, really cool, fun, interesting place you could go to kind of escape communism for a while and to do all the fun things that you can have access to the West, like wear blue jeans and have cool food and all the rest of it. But then it ends, right? Like you go home. So I was wondering if maybe that's sort of where it came from.
Okay, I think both of you are definitely on the right track. I did a search for Hong Kong orgasm, and eventually
Sorry.
Whoa. You did a search for what now?
And eventually I arrived at that kind of answer. I also asked Dustin of Sandman Stories, because he's a Korean speaker. I asked, do you know this? Is this a thing that you're aware of? Or have you heard it lately? So Dustin says, I don't know how popular it is, but my wife is familiar with it. My students haven't used it around me that I know of. I also can't remember the last time I saw it in media. My wife said that Hong Kong isn't as special anymore, and that trend is kind of past. Plus, as it is sexual slang, it wouldn't be easy to see it in popular culture. But he did find this for me from principlesofknowledge.kr. And it's basically what you're saying, that Hong Kong was seen as a Western place, a fun place. We have an expression in English, going to town, which is sexual but also not. It's like, man, they went to town on that pizza. Or, oh, we got to her place and we went to town. And that's just a way of saying, you know, when you went to town, that was an exciting thing, a special thing that you did to do fun stuff. And so that became a metaphor for doing something sexual or not with great enthusiasm. So, and also principlesofknowledge.kr, link on our website, says that also Hong Kong is kind of known for adult products and adult services.
Oh, okay. I like in a similar way to sort of Amsterdam having its sort of notorious red light district kind of thing.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. This just reminded me of one of my very favorite linguistic TikToks that I ever saw, which was a young woman who was talking about how her mum, who is Lebanese, in English we have the usage of Timbuktu to mean the most remote and insanely ridiculously far off possible conception of geography, right? Like, he went to Timbuktu means you could not have gone further, quote unquote, off the map, which is obviously very colonial and racist and all the rest of it. She talks about how in different languages you use different places. And so in Lebanese, her mum would say, and her friends would say, I've gone to Honolulu. Honolulu, the capital of Hawaii, being the place that could not be more remote and far-fetched, which I've got to be honest, actually makes a lot more sense because like Honolulu
too.
Is just, it's so far from everything. But what I loved about that story was that much like Timbuktu, being an actual real place that many millions of people live, like Honolulu is a real place, and her mum went to Honolulu on her honeymoon and then had to tell her friends, I went to Honolulu, and they're like, where did you really go?
No, I really did go to Honolulu.
And I just like this idea that places can actually mean completely different things. Like for the vast majority of English speakers, Timbuktu means very far away rather than the actual very real city that it is.
It reminds me, I've heard that people in Norwegian, they use Texas to mean crazy. They'll say, that's so Texas. Yeah. and they mean it so more good. In like the wild, out there, Wild West, I think conception is where it came from. But yeah, yeah, it's really funny.
Ben, is there an actual Australian town called Whoop Whoop? Because we use that expression, going out to Whoop Whoop.
I don't fucking know it. Hold on.
If you're in Whoop Whoop, please let us know that you're real. Also, double for Kalamazoo.
No, I don't think it is. We do, however, have several different towns that are very close to that. So my partner, for a substantial part of her life, or a non-trivial part of her life, lived in a place called Wagga Wagga. 2 words, Wagga Wagga, which like really isn't that far from Whoop Whoop as a concept. But I think that's probably to do with the fact in a lot of Indigenous languages, here we go, can I get the right word? Reduplication is a feature.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes! Ben, I'm so proud of you.
Fucking crushing it! So, like, we have a town here near where Daniel and I live called Gin Gin. Because its original name was Gin Gin Up, and Gin is the word for hill, and there was 2 hills with water in the middle. Up means water. Gin Gin Up. So I think Wagga Wagga probably had a similar thing. It's not the bad thing, I don't think, Daniel.
Okay, thank you. No, I'm making that expression because up is often thought to mean water, and there often is water, but it's just up really just means place. Yeah. There's often water in a place, but it's the place of 2 hills. That's cool. We have in Washington State, where Mignon and I both hail from, apparently. You know the town I'm thinking of, right?
Walla Walla.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which means water. Walla means water. And
Does
am I right? Am I getting that right?
I have no idea. I've never even thought about what it means. It's just Walla Walla, and they have wonderful Walla Walla sweet onions there.
They do. You can bite them like apples. Yum.
What song am I thinking of? There's a song that has like Walla Walla. It's like a.
You're thinking of Witch Doctor.
Am I?
Ooh ee ooh ah ah.
Walla Walla Bing Bang. Yeah. Walla Walla Bing Bang. Yeah. There we go.
Walla Walla, Washington.
Yeah. There we go.
All right. Last thing, I just want to say, you notice how you go to Hong Kong, you don't come to Hong Kong. I really want to do a map of how languages handle orgasm, whether it's come or go. What verb do they use? I think that would be a really interesting chart.
You're such a nerd. I love it.
But extremely comfortable with sexuality, as you'll notice.
A sex-positive nerd. Well done.
All right. Well, that's all the questions we got. I'm so thankful to the people who gave us such great questions, all of our Discordians, all of our listeners. Thanks to you, Ben, for being here today.
Always a pleasure.
And huge thanks to Mignon Fogarty. Thanks for being on our show.
Yeah, that was an absolute blast. Thanks for asking me.
I demand more Mignon. And remember, if you can't, I think, what's our thing? 3 times? And you are essentially a co-presenter of the show.
Let's do it.
Honorary co-host.
I love titles.
Yeah. Mignon, how can people find out what you're doing?
Oh, probably I'm on Twitter most of the time, so I'm Grammar Girl at Twitter, but I'm also at the Quick and Dirty Tips podcast network, quickanddirtytips.com, and you can find the Grammar Girl podcast wherever all fine podcasts are free.
And a quick plug, what's your new thing?
Oh, and the new show is Curious State, and the host is Doug Fraser. We're so excited from Quick and Dirty Tips, the Curious State podcast.
This, by the way, and this, I hope this doesn't sound like an indictment on all of the other things you do, but the description you gave of Curious State being, could dinosaurs live today? And if so, what would they eat? That went so far up my alley, it got stuck. Like that's my jam. So I'm definitely going to be listening out for that.
Yep.
I know. I think it's going to be great.
If you like the show, here's what you can do to make sure there's more good show for you to like. You can send us ideas and feedback. We are Because Lang Pod on all of the possible places. You can leave us a message with SpeakPipe like Ayelet did today, and it was so great to hear her voice. That's on our website, becauselanguage.com. You can send us a good old-fashioned archaic, I was about to say snail mail, but that's not right, email. Tell a friend about us or leave a review like Dustin from Sandman Stories does as a ongoing act of outright heroism. People are just like asking Twitter for recommendations of podcasts, and God, what a wild ride that must be for an individual to do. But Dustin is out there fighting the good fight and giving people really solid recommendations, of which we are one, and that's awesome. Thank you, Dustin. And you can always, obviously, become a patron. To do so, you'll get to listen to episodes like this when we first air them, the bonus episodes, before we put them out for Gen Pop. And you help us transcribe our shows, which is really awesome. It allows them to be searchable, and it also allows people who can't hear to be able to access our shows as well, which is really, really wonderful. And bonus, you get to hang out with us on Discord. It's sick. You should come and stop by.
It's true. Speaking of transcripts, big shout out to Speech Docs, who are doing a great job on ours. If you have a podcast, they will transcribe things for you.
Once again, Speech Docs, I am so sorry. Oh, and I have something to say to one of our Speech Docs transcribers.
Oh, yes?
I received simply a statement, Taisha Menetherin, Taisha Malkia. And all I would say to that, I feel you, bro. I feel you. I know I should bust out like a really good Wheel of Time reference here, but I just wanted to convey to that person, that was so lovely and wonderful. Thank you. It made me feel so good.
Big shout out to our top patrons. They are Dustin, Termy, Chris B, James S, Matt, Whitney, Chris L, Helen, Udo, Jack, Pharaohcat, and Lord Mortis, Elias, Larry, Christopher, James, Nigel, Meredith, Kate, Nasrin, Aisha, Sneaky Lemur, Moe, Steele, Andrew, Manu, Roger, Rianne, Colleen, Glyph, Ignacio, Sonic, Snedgehog, Kevin, Jeff, Angie from Logophilius, Samantha, Zoe, Kathy, Rash, Cheyenne, Felicity, Amir, Andy R, Tim, and wonderful human being KB, who didn't contribute via Patreon, but with the one-time donation button on our blog, becauselanguage.com. Also, hello to our newest patrons at the listener level, Hannah, and at the friend level, Caitlin. It's great to see you all. Thanks for hanging out with us on Discord. Thanks to all our amazing patrons.
Our theme music has been written and performed by Drew Krupp-Leonoff, who's a member of Ryan Bino and of Didion's Bible. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time. Because Language.
Nice reading, Mignon.
Thank you.
I think she skipped the other two. Like if you close off the show, surely that's like a cheat code for being a co-presenter, right? Like that's
What? Oh,
I think so. Speaking of chuggy,
yes.
I just want to drop a bit of wisdom. Because this is a saying that really resonated with me, and maybe it'll work. It won't work for you because you're not as cringe as I am, but I've always felt like my life was cringe. Growing up, in the milieu that I do, and also looking at my past work and going, oh, geez, really? Everything that I've done up to this point is cringe, but what I'm doing now is great. But then that'll be cringe as it recedes.
I was just about to say, like, I'm sure we've all thought that at all of the various points.
Okay, maybe.
But is that like the opposite of God? I didn't know how hot I was when I was 20. I wish I had known, like looking back at pictures. Oh my God, I thought, I was cute.
I thought I was gawky and awkward, and instead I was
So no
flaming
matter
hot.
where in your past you look, there's something to flex over. Is that what you're saying, Daniel?
Well, no, the
You used to be
opposite,
hot and dumb,
actually.
and now you're smart and ugly. Is this
No,
sort of
I'm
like?
I'm hot and smart now.
Okay.
It's just that everything in my past is cringe.
I
But
see.
the saying, here's the wisdom. The saying that I learned, it's an old internet saying, and it goes like this. Do not kill the part of you that is cringe. Kill the part of you that cringes.
Okay.
Isn't that great?
I think there is a nugget in there.
I think there is. I think it's very wise. I'm
Cheeky noog.
I'm living by that for a while.